Okay, we have made it to the last chapter of the clay marble, and we will pick up with this, and we'll also read the afterword as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We're actually on chapter 18, The Clay Marble by Mingfong Ho, and we will start on page 154. Chapter 18. It was still dark when I woke up. Turning toward the opening of the thatched shelter, I looked out at the night sky. A full moon gleamed through a web of branches, and a bright morning star shone near it. The only hint of dawn was a faint glow to the east, so dim that it was just a pale shade of gold gray. Why had I woken up so early? There had been no sudden noise, no clap of thunder, no gunfire or sound of shelling. Except for the whine of a mosquito, it was absolutely quiet. What had woken me up? And why did the morning feel so special? Then I remembered. Today was the day we were to leave. Even now I could hardly believe it. Was it really happening? What I had dreamed of for so long? Yes, I reassured myself. We were going home, all of us, my family and John Two's. John Two. That familiar heaviness, like an ache deep inside, settled on me again. The day after she died, we had taken her to the small clearing deep in the forest where two low brick walls had been built for cremations. I had gathered some wildflowers from the woods that morning and placed a bouquet of wild clemone and morning glories over her. The flowers had already wilted, and I did not stay to see them crinkle up in the flames. Thinking about Jean Two now, I wish I had given her something more, something that I had woven or shaped, something I had made, like all the things that she had made and given me. I sat up and took my two magic marbles out of my shirt pocket. The larger one was Jean Two's, and the smaller one mine. I could have given her these two marbles, I thought, but what use would they have had for them? She had had for them. I looked at the marbles now, and the aches inside me grew sharper. I miss you, I told John Two. I wish you were coming with us. Nearby, the others were beginning to stir. My mother had already rolled up her sleeping mat and slipped outside. Through the cracks in the loose thatching, I could see her gathering an armful of straw to feed the oxen. Nia was up too, stoking the embers of the cooking fire to warm up some cold rice for a quick breakfast. Dara, Nia was calling, come have some rice now. We'll be leaving right after we eat. I took a deep breath and slipped the two marbles back into my pocket, and then I went outside. There was a general sense of excitement in the air. My brother had begun to hitch up the carts, and Grandpa Kim was helping him. Mother was folding the last of the sarongs she had washed and hung out the night before. Even Baby was busy, crawling around and exploring the ground under the ox carts. I saw a lone figure slip out of the shadows of the nearby trees and hurry toward us. Even before I could see his face, I knew it was Shanae. I was surprised, but glad too. Ever since I had found my own family, he had avoided me, even though I had invited him to eat with us several times. But he had always refused, claiming that he felt more comfortable eating by himself. I waved to him now and waited for him to come up to me. I brought you something, he said awkwardly. He held out a wooden cowbell, polished to such a high sheen that it gleamed in the morning light. Where did you get it? I asked. Shanae smiled. I made it, he said with pride. I thought of the way he used to break John Two's toys, smashing them to the ground and laughing. It was hard to think of him making anything. He must have seen the surprise on my face because he smiled. The first two bells I carved didn't turn out very well. This is my third try. Thanks, Shanae, I said. Actually, Shanae said awkwardly, I made it for Jean too. At least I was thinking about her when I made it. He walked over to our pair of oxen and started to tie the bell around the bigger one's neck. I went over to the ox and stood on his other side. As he busied himself with tying the bell, Shanae continued. I thought of the way she used to make things out of sticks and scraps and mud, and, well, I felt bad that I had broken so many of them. John Two would have liked your bell very much, I said shyly, stroking the muzzle of the ox. It tossed its head, swinging its new bell. It was a lovely sound, and the low wooden knock-knock of it. Shanae and I smiled at each other. Why don't you come back with us? I said. You'll like our village. He kept smiling, but his eyes turned sad. I wouldn't belong there, he said. Do you think you belong here? Shanae shrugged. Here at least I won't feel so out of place. I mean, there are a lot of loners like me, boys without any family. Shanae paused. I've gotten to know some of them already. And guess what? I've made friends with that monkey too. He flashed me a smile, and then he was gone, running off without a backwards glance, his bare feet kicking up sprays of water as he splashed through the puddles between the trees. By mid-morning, everything was ready. Our oxen were hitched to the 2 ox carts, each bulging with its pile of rice bags and tools, and the blue tarp stretched on top. Nearby in a crooked line, the other ox carts in the caravan were waiting, ready to start. Climb up, Saroon shouted over to me. I walked over to our ox cart and climbed onto the wooden plank in front. There, I took a last look around. On the parade ground, soldiers were still doing their drills, and beyond them I could hear the rhythmic pounding of rice seed in the little shed. Behind the grove of the jacaranda trees, over the thatch roof of the kitchen, I could see the blue and white Khmer Sarai flag fluttering in the morning breeze. Nia climbed up too and sat next to me, hugging the baby to her. In the cart in front of us sat Grandpa Kem and my mother, looking radiant. Saroon was going to walk alongside their cart, leading the oxen. As if sensing the excitement, the animals were pawing at the ground and tossing their heads up and down. People ran about calling out farewells, gathering a few stray belongings, making last-minute checks of the harnesses on the ropes before climbing onto their ox carts. Then the team leader stood straight up in the first cart and flicked his whip high in the air. Ho! He shouted, and his oxen lumbered forward, pulling the cart along with them. Mother's cart was the next. Saroon turned around, his eyes shining. Ready? He called, and without waiting for our answer, tugged the oxen forward. It was our turn now. You take the reins, Nia said excitedly. I've got baby. I gripped the reins in my hand so tightly that my fingers felt numb. Come on, Nia urged me. I nodded, and then tugged at the reins. Creaking loudly, the wheels started rolling. Behind me, I could hear driver after driver shouting at his oxen as each started up his cart in turn. Farther ahead, Saroon was guiding his oxen on a path into the forest, away from the camp's clearing. The path that wound through the trees was narrow and uneven, edged with long puddles where previous ruts had filled with rainwater. Following Saroon's ox cart, I pulled at my reins, veering the oxen onto the narrow path. There was a big bump as a cartwheel dipped into a rut. As we lurched forward, the bigger of the 2 clay marbles inside my pocket flew out into the air and rolled into the puddle. Jantu's marble, I cried. I tried to rein in the oxen, but they just plodded along, intent on following the cart ahead. Frantically, I stood up, prepared to jump off the cart after the marble. What are you doing? Nia asked, alarmed. Jantu's marble, it slipped out and... We can't stop for it. You'll hold up the whole caravan. But she made it. It's all I have of her. I was on the verge of tears. It's her magic marble. Nia reached out and put her hand on my shoulder. The magic was never in the marble, sister, she said. It was in Jantu, and now it's in you. For a long moment I stared at the puddle into which Jantu's marble had disappeared. The last ripple had faded, and there was not a trace of the clay marble left. Slowly, I took the other marble out of my pocket, the one I had made myself, and held it. Round and smooth and hard, it lay there in my palm. I looked at it, and for the first time I saw it for what it was, just a lump of clay. There was no magic in it, I realized, not in the one Jantu made, nor in the one that I made. And then I finally understood what Jantu had meant when she had said the magic is in the making of the marble. I held my marble for a moment longer. Then I stood up in the ox cart and, taking a deep breath, flung the marble away. It sailed through the air, rolled to the side of the road, and slipped into the same strip of puddle as Jantu's marble. There was a tiny splash, a few ripples, and then it too was gone. I sat back down and snapped the reins. The oxen lumbered forward, and the cart wheels turned a little faster. Our cart rolled ahead, smooth and fast. Nearby, a skylark sang, perched on a sandalwood tree. The morning air was fresh and cool, and the sky a cloudless blue. Through the trees in the forest, I could see patches of vibrant green rice seedlings rippling in the breeze, and all around me was a sound of cowbells, the brass ones tinkling, the bamboo ones tapping like tiny drums, the shiny bronze ones jangling. But the most beautiful sound of them all was the low knocking of the wooden bell dangling from our own oxen. I tossed my head back and laughed out loud in sheer joy. I'm going home, I thought, and I don't need magic marbles anymore. After all, the magic isn't in the marble, it's in me. That's the end of chapter 18. Let's go ahead and read the afterword. That was over 10 years ago. We had been lucky, my family and I. We were among those to return from the border safely and settle back into our village in Siem Reap. We planted our first crop with the precious rice seed we were given at Nong Chan, and our harvest that year was a good one. Sarun and Nia have 3 children now, 2 boys and a girl. They live just across the field from us. Mother lives with them, but comes to visit me almost every other day. The years have been difficult, but we have survived. Cambodia is still a country at war, and there continues to be fighting in scattered areas, especially around the border. But so far, it has not touched us directly. There are still heavily armed soldiers there, the Khmer Rouge and the Khmer Sarai and the Khmer People's National Liberation Front, still merging and splitting into uneasy alliances with one another and against the Vietnamese-backed Heng Samrin government. Sometimes, though, over the radio I hear reports of a peace plan being negotiated in some foreign city, but nothing ever seems to come of it. Meanwhile, the war continues and the fighting continues. It makes no more sense to me now than when I was a little girl at the border. I don't think about what happened on the border very much anymore, but sometimes on an afternoon like this, when the monsoon wind is stirring the palm fronds, when the skies are alive with swallows and homemade kites, diving and dipping above the green paddy fields, when the young rice stalks ripped in sweeping waves, then I sit on the steps of our little house, and the images of the border sweep like swallows through my mind. I see many sad things. That gaunt, hollow-eyed boy with no legs, reaching for his water bottle. Those silent women pounding the rice seed into bits of broken grain. The lost little girl with a broken doll crying for her mother. But of John 2, I only have happy images. I see her the way she was at the well that first day. Bossy, cheerful, loud. I see her running after the food truck, hitching baby up to her hip as she ran. I see her singing her lullaby in the twilight after the rain, her eyes shining to our little clay dolls. I make pretty good clay dolls myself now. I shape farmers and plump babies, buffaloes and ducks, and give them to my daughter to play with. That's right. I have a daughter now, a toddler with chubby fingers and sparkling eyes. My husband dotes on her and is always urging me to make her more clay toys. There's one thing I haven't made for her, and that is a clay marble. I know I can make them the way John 2 taught me, smooth and round and hard, but I'm not going to make any yet. When the time comes, I want to teach her how to make a magic marble for herself. And that's the end of the clay marble. I hope you enjoyed the book.